Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Macc with your daily comedy news. It looks like Forbes, somebody at Forbes anyway, are the biggest fans of Shane Gillis. The headline, SNL brings Shane Gillis back to host following controversial firing and poorly received first hosting gig. Was it poorly received? No SNL this week, but March 1st, I think, is the date. Shane Gillis is hosting SNL. Yes, March 1st to, 8 days. Forbes writes, Shane Gillis, the comedian whose history of jokes deemed racist and offensive led to his controversial firing from Saturday Night Live in 2019, is hosting the show for a second time, despite critics saying he struggled and bombed in his first hosting gig last year. They did pull some reviews where some people thought Shane struggled, some thought he bombed. I thought it was pretty funny. To each their own. All right, I bounced this from yesterday. From The Root, they write, comedian Trevor Noah has never been one to shy away from hot topics and hot takes, but this latest one has the internet sounding off, and for a good reason. I seen this earlier in the week, and I wanted to take a beat and just see how it unpacked and let some other people provide wisdom before I started chiming in here. In the latest episode of the What Now podcast, Trevor has guest Ruha Benjamin, a professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. They discuss whether or not integration was better for America as a whole when it came to black people. The Root writes, while some black folks may feel like integration was ultimately beneficial, Trevor Noah argued that segregation may have actually been the best if we separate the oppressive and negative ways it affected things like the school system and other entities. The Root writes his sentiments matched that of other black folks who also believe that we would be better off tending to our own gardens, businesses, and society in general, and separate from white folks. Continuing to quote from The Root, Noah also cited the country of Finland as further proof of a country that's better when its people are all unified and on one accord as to what goals they want to accomplish, and the backlash that black people faced in the aftermath in the U.S. once integration took place. When he posed the question to Professor Benjamin, she agreed, citing the fact that segregation and integration weren't the only options and that it didn't ultimately serve black people to be integrated into institutions and systems that were riddled with anxiety, hierarchy, and white supremacy. Naturally, once the clip went viral on social media, many had much to say. One person tweeted, quoting the tweet, Trevor Noah almost certainly lives in a nearly all-white neighborhood, LMAO. I was curious. I Googled Trevor Noah residence. The New York Post reported on March 18th of 2024, Trevor Noah tours $4.7 million home in New York City's West Village. The New York Post on September 8th of 2023 reported Trevor Noah sells New York City penthouse for $9.5 million. They say Noah lived in style inside Stella Tower at 425 West 50th Street. There's a video from a channel that calls itself The Real Estate Insider. Their video is titled Trevor Noah Bel Air Mansion, $26,400,000. House of Celebs has a video from November of 24 titled Trevor Noah's impressive $24.9 million Los Angeles home. I make no editorial comment there. I'm just telling you I was curious, where does Trevor Noah live? Another user wrote, MAGA is going to be posting this as owning Trevor Noah, but he brings up great points. America was so racist that integration was very complicated. That's what he's saying. Another user said Trevor Noah would probably be president if he was American. He's basically the second coming of Obama. Comedian D.L. Hughley chimed in and called Trevor Noah's opinion the stupidest thing he's ever heard. Hughley told TMZ, I've had enough from South Africans. Between Elon Musk and Trevor, I don't need to hear about race from two dudes from South Africa. Trevor Noah has yet to respond to D.L. Hughley as I record this. I'm actually recording this on Wednesday to accommodate my schedule. I plan to listen to the episode. I'm actually going to download it right now while I remember to educate myself more on the subject. The episode is titled DEI with Ruha Benjamin. The episode description includes the three discuss whether DEI initiatives are in fact valuable and how the world will look without them, why universities honor people whose voices they previously tried to silence, and how best to navigate a world that was not built for us. Can the three collectively imagine a better world order? While I have my phone out, I see the February 6th episode was titled No One Told Trevor He Was Hosting the Grammys. I'm downloading that one too. Now, I can hear some of you now going, John, get to the comedy. Come on, stop getting political. This is where comedy is right now. John Oliver talked to USA Today. The topic, the speed of news in the second Trump administration. Oliver says that's what everyone's wrestling with, isn't it? I guess it's very helpful to have a show to process all these feelings, though. This may age very badly, said John, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to do more of those timeless stories because we'll be able to contain the chaos. John wants to reassure his viewers without giving false hope. I don't know how that's going to end up. We're going to try our best. For our last show of last year, we were trying to meet people where they were. We definitely don't want to give false hope. There's lots of that right now. So yeah, I don't know. That's what we're tackling this week. We're trying to land on something that is uplifting in a way that you can stand on. We can't say everything's going to be all right when clearly it is not. We generally don't like to follow what's happening in the news of the week, but that's harder to do when the administration is this chaotic. Hopefully going forward, we'll be able to contain the chaos of the Trump administration at the start of the show, and then the main body of it can be left for the more systemic issues, which we're more interested in covering, showing people things they haven't seen before rather than stuff they're seeing all the time. USA Today said to John in the last episode of 24, you mentioned you had a wish for 25, which was less Elon Musk. That hasn't exactly turned out the way you were hoping. Oliver said, I think I might just stop wishing for things. There's a genie with a very sick sense of humor somewhere. I don't see us getting any less Elon Musk anytime soon. We're getting more and more of him to a medically inadvisable degree. Good question here. John Oliver, do you foresee more pushback on your content from your corporate parents? HBO is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. John said, definitely we will continue to behave like there's nothing we can't talk about. That's how we've operated the last 11 years, and that's certainly how we're going to continue doing it. Let's get out of the political zone. Tig Notaro is going to host the AMBIES. Those are some podcast awards. Now, don't get too excited about podcast awards. There are podcast awards every 16 minutes in this country, I believe. Anyway, Grammy-nominated comedian and podcaster Tig Notaro will host the AMBIES on March 31st in Chicago. The ceremony will be live on Twitch from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Central Time on that Monday night. The AMBIES celebrate excellence in podcasting and elevate awareness and status of podcasts, blah, blah, blah. Tig said, I'm so excited to host the Podcast Academy's 5th annual awards for excellence in audio. It's like being at the Oscars, only it's celebrating those of us who are good at talking into a microphone while wearing sweatpants in our closets with pillows on our windows. Take that, Meryl. And Meryl, while I have your attention, would you be a guest on my podcast? I won't do all the nominees. We'll look at some of them. Podcast of the Year, see if any comedies are here. 99% Invisible, Beyond All Repair, Cement City, Dragon Age, Empire City, Faraway, Fire Escape, Hot White Heist 2, Hysterical, and Throughline. Hot White Heist 2 is actually an Audible show, so those of us in the industry would argue whether or not it's a podcast. Anyway, it stars Bowen Yang, Jane Lynch, Cynthia Nixon, Ian McKellen, and others. Best Comedy Podcast. The nominees are, oh, by the way, there's breaking news. My daughter, reporting in from college, she got her housing for next year. My phone will not stop beeping. I'm very happy for her, but I already told you, I'm recording a podcast. Stop texting me. Dad's a jerk. Right click, hide alerts. Best Comedy Podcast. The nominees are Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, Hot White Heist 2, which, again, is an Audible show, not really a podcast. Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang. So Bowen's up against Bowen. Scam Goddess, Smartless, We're Here to Help, and Who Replaced Avril Lavigne. Out of those, I would pick Conan, I guess. None of that really excites me. Best Interview Podcast. One of the nominees, Thanks Dad with Ego Nwodim. Apparently that's a thing. Best Performance in Audio Fiction, sponsored by Audible. The first nominee is Hot White Heist 2, which is produced by Audible when it isn't really a podcast. It's an audio series you can get on Audible. It's different than a podcast. A podcast, of course, as you know, would include an RSS feed enclosure. But I don't want to get into that today. Anyway, one of the nominees, Bowen Yang, for his Audible show, sponsored by Audible. I'm punchy today. Best Podcast Host nominees include Jon Stewart for The Weekly Show with Jon Stewart, Rainn Wilson for Radio Rental, and some other folks who are not comedians. The press release here has a section called About Tig Notaro. Should we read it? Yes, we should. Tig Notaro is an Emmy, Grammy, WGA, and SAG Award nominated comedian, actor, of course, great actor on Star Trek Discovery. I mean, clearly Star Trek Discovery, the greatest Star Trek series ever made. Not. Actor, writer, director, producer, and podcast host, originally from Mississippi and named by Rolling Stone as one of the 50 best stand-up comics of all time. Resist, John, resist, resist, resist. You can't get into that. Just accept that somebody once said Tig Notaro is one of the 50 best stand-up comics of all time. Resist, John, resist, resist. Take the break so you don't go down the rabbit hole. Take the break, take the break. You're going to go down the rabbit hole. You know you want to talk about this. Is Tig Notaro one of the 50 best stand-up comics of all time? Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Take the break. Is Tig Notaro one of the 50 best stand-up comedians of all time? Facebook group, Daily Comedy News Podcast group. Jimmy Fallon has checked off another item from his bucket list. He got his picture at Sardi's. Sardi's is a very New York thing. It's been a staple of the Broadway community since the 1920s, and it honors its famous patrons with caricatures. You know, they draw you and they stick you on the wall. And you sit there and you eat at Sardi's and you look at the wall and you go, oh, I recognize that person, or I kind of heard that person's name, or other people are like, how's that person on the wall? The time-honored tradition has resulted in a collection of some 1,200 portraits adorning its walls. Jimmy Fallon had recently voiced his hopes that he would score a Sardi's portrait. Fallon had kicked off a 6-day run starring in the rotating cast of Simon Rich's all-in comedy about love. After Fallon made his wish, Stephen Colbert announced his own desire to be immortalized at Sardi's. Colbert was interviewing Lin-Manuel Miranda at the time. Lin promised Colbert he'd make a call. I've bounced this story for a week. I don't know if you heard, SNL turned 50, and we talked about it a lot. Anyway, so last week, when Paul Schaefer was sitting in as the band leader, Paul said to Fallon, Lionel Barrymore and those classic actors, they went on a whole career and they'd get their portraits in Sardi's after like 75 years on Broadway. How long was your run? Fallon said, almost a week. Fallon encouraged fans to visit Sardi's themselves, both to support the theater community and to catch a glimpse of Jimmy Fallon's caricature. Jimmy said, go to Sardi's and on your way to the men's room, look out for someone familiar. Fun fact, Jimmy Fallon is now the 4th Tonight Show host to hang on the restaurant's walls. All right, let me list the hosts for you. Hopefully I don't forget anybody. I'll get a nasty note from Mike Chisholm and be like, how did you forget so-and-so? All right, so we had Steve Allen, then Jack Paar. We don't talk enough about Jack Paar. Jack Paar is fantastic. A little before my time, but, I'm educated. Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, and Jimmy Fallon. I didn't forget anybody there, right? I mean, other the guest hosts, all right? So who are the 4 that are hanging in Sardi's? Can you guess? I'll come back and I'll end with that. I'll tell you one more story. So who are the 4 hosts, including Jimmy Fallon? So who are the other 3 that made the wall in Sardi's? James Acaster is going to be a judge on Dinner is Scrapped. On Dinner is Scrapped, 2 celebrity chefs battle it out in the kitchen, but using only ecologically sound ingredients, such as upcycled foods, which are waste and byproducts that would not have otherwise been consumed by humans. Acaster likes food. He hosts the food-based Off-Menu podcast with Ed Gamble. The pilot episode is currently in post-production. The producers are in conversations about where it will air. They're making 8 half-hour episodes. All right, trivia time. Name the 4 hosts whose characters air in Sardi's. Can you name them? They are, of course, Jimmy Fallon, Steve Allen, Jack Paar, and Johnny Carson. No Conan yet, and no Jay Leno. Interesting. And no Jay Leno a second time either. He's not up there twice, if you know what I'm saying. And that is your comedy news for today. Weird one today. I'm having a good time. If you enjoy the program, tell a friend about it. They might like it too. See you back here tomorrow.